All right, now that we've looked at the Declaration of Independence, let's go ahead and take a moment and look at the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation was the first form of government in America, not the U.S. Constitution, but the Articles of Confederation. And basically, as you can see, it was a firm league of friendship among the states. In other words, let's say New York was attacked by the British, and they called out for help from Georgia, and they said, Georgia, please send troops. According to the articles, Georgia could say, oh, that's terrible, New York, we're sorry, but no, we're not sending in troops. Whereas compared to today, like, for example, September 11th, when New York was attacked, the nation responded as a whole. That was not the case during the Articles of Confederation. Congress was given the power to declare war, deal with financial issues, but really that's about it. The states had to promise to obey Congress, but most of the power during the Articles of Confederation from 1776 to 1787 was retained by the state. Now, it did have some good things that it did do. First of all, it won the war for independence. Under that government, Articles of Confederation, we did win the war. Then it also created a systematic way of dividing up the new territory, the Northwest. Now, when we think Northwest, today we think Washington, Oregon, Idaho, that area. Back then, it was this area here, what we would call today Big Ten country: Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana. And what they did is they divided it into townships. Basically, you had 6 miles by 6 miles. And within the 6 miles by 6 miles, they divided it into 1 mile squares, as you can see. This was called a section. And then you could take that section and divide it into half sections, quarter sections, half quarter, and quarter quarter. And a quarter quarter section is 40 acres. Okay? So 40 acres of land would be considered quarter quarter section. And that's how they divided all this. And if you go out there today, if you go to Indiana, Ohio, that area, the streets run just like this. Very parallel to each other, etc. Now, I want to take a moment and talk about here in Florida. Some of our older cities in Florida follow the same thing. If you think about Daytona Beach, you have pretty straight roads: Nova, Williamson, A1A, going north and south. And then going east and west, of course, you've got Dunlawton, Bevel, International Speedway, LPGA, Granada, etc. So in an older town like Daytona and Ormond, that area, you'll find the squares and rectangles. Another good example in Florida is Miami. Miami is an older town too in our state. And if you look at an aerial shot of Miami, it's pretty square and rectangle for the streets. But some of your newer cities like Deltona and Orlando was nothing really until Mickey came to town in 1971. You know, the streets here in Deltona, they're like spaghetti. They go all over the place because they didn't follow this same example. The other thing that the Northwest Ordinance did, and this kind of cut it off for some reason, is each town set aside Section 16 right here for public schools. It's because, really, of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 under the Articles of Confederation that you're sitting here or at home in school. Section 16. And think about it. We are sitting in a Section 16 here. We've got Pine Ridge, Pride, Heritage isn't that far away. And then up the road, you've got Timbercrest, Galaxy, the library, and Deltona High. Those are examples of Section 16. Over in Orange City, you've got University High School, River Springs, and Manatee Cove, all right there together. And so to this day, we still follow this example of Section 16, setting aside land for a public school. But there were a lot of weaknesses. Each state only got 1 vote in the Articles of Confederation. They couldn't collect taxes. A little hard to run a government when you can't get money. There was no national court, so if Georgia had a problem with North Carolina, there was no court to settle that dispute. And you had to have 9 out of 13 states to pass laws. Okay? And you had this firm league of friendship. Finally, you have a call for a stronger government. They show up in Mount Vernon at George Washington's doorstep and said, we need to form a better government. And finally, they start meeting at the Constitutional Convention in 1787, very hot conditions. They closed the windows, closed the doors, and for that summer in Philadelphia, it was over 100 degrees. And can you imagine being in that room, no deodorant, wool suits? It would not have been a pretty sight to have seen. But that is when they sat down to write the Constitution, because the articles just were not working. And one of the things that really proved that we needed a new government was Shays' Rebellion, and you've probably covered that in U.S. history. But when Shays' Rebellion happened, they knew they needed something new besides the articles. And here you can see the leaders who were at the convention and some who were not at the convention. Patrick Henry, he didn't like what was going on. Samuel Adams, John Hancock, they were not selected, believe it or not. Here they are, big names that signed the Declaration, and they were not chosen by their states to be sent. Jefferson was in Paris, and John Adams was in England, and so they weren't there. This was, of course, would become our second president, and Jefferson would be our third. And we will get to that a little later. So that is the Articles of Confederation, and hopefully you have a better sense of why it ended up failing and we had to go with the Constitution.